capacity building awareness. New age laws requiring deep thinking and understanding current global policies are key to development and frame policies and procedures for Advocate Preeti. Mitigating the risk and stating issues is key for progress of any technology enterprise. As innovation coach, she is designed to address human and technical capacity challenges with special focus on generating innovations both domestically and internationally. Advocate Preeti obtained BSc honors in applied science from University of Delhi. She did her MSc in biotechnology and LLB from Jaipur. She did entrepreneurship course from Indian School of Business sponsored by Goldman's Cash 10,000 Women Entrepreneur Initiative. She is certified mediator for commercial disputes and negotiator in India. She is passionate about technology law. Is active in international technology arena and recently participated in 4th annual Asia Pacific Spectral Management Conference and in World Summit on the Information Society Forum 2018, Geneva. Her work has been featured and published in BBC World, Nature Group, Nature's Review, Drug Discovery, Business World, Biospectrum Asia, etc. Previous work experience with US law firm headquarters in Greater New York City arena. Advocate Preeti Kashkir is applying technology laws for over a decade to incorporate best brand practices with special focus on patents. Innovation is very core of her mandate to explore the exciting field of intellectual property rights on a global scale. She has successfully delivered design thinking workshop in association with Indian Patent Office to train intellectual minds to work in exciting field of patent with hawk eye approaches. With this brief, I would like to request Advocate Preeti Kashkir kindly be on the virtual dais. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Monica. Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. It's indeed of my absolute pleasure to take this session on artificial intelligence and how AI is being utilized in the regulatory affairs. So we have the chat box here. Feel free to ask any of your questions during the session. I'll try and address during the session or after the session. I'll share my screen now. Are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, great. So firstly, as I said, I want this session to be interactive and I would like everyone to participate during the session, and I would be asking some simple questions so that after this session, we understand that how artificial intelligence can be utilized not only in the pharma sector, but on a regular basis to make our work more intelligent. In the earlier session, Govind ji talked about GMP, so quality assurance and the output and what kind of input data should go so that the work becomes more productive and we can utilize AI to drive innovation in multiple ways, and how AI has been utilized in the regulatory framework globally. That is the main topic which I would be addressing today. So we would be focusing on 4 major topics. What is AI? Role of big data in AI. We have some use case studies and the ethical issues and regulations around AI in the pharmaceutical sector. Now, this is a very interesting slide. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. So my question to the participants is, what does this slide signify them when they see this? Like, the slide has a lot of data inputs. And as I said, it's a virtual event. I really want everybody to participate in it. You can use the chat box or you can unmute yourself to talk about how do you feel that AI is everywhere and what is the application or the kind of resources you are using where you think AI is playing a major role in your life. given the matter of fact that we are utilizing communication network to drive data from one node to another node. So my first question is, artificial intelligence is everywhere. So can people share in the chat box and I can read about it and we can talk a little bit about it before I move to the next slide. So I have the chat interface with me, Google Assistant. Yes, Echo is a very good example where we are utilizing not only the data, but it is a voice assistant where the voice is recognized by the Google, that is AI based. Then we have Dr. Monica says scanning QR for payments, GMAP. Very well pointed out. The QR code. Now, why you think QR code is very important from the point of view of pharmaceutical sector also? Because you will see a lot of medicines now they are coming up with the QR code, and where the user who is purchasing the medicine can scan the QR code just to go through the details of the composition, the batch or the lot from where it has been distributed and where it has been made. Now, GMAP or Google Map again is a very resourceful tool, given the fact, as stated here also, like what is happening is if each one of us is having some kind of smartphone and we own it today, stating that fact, the latitude and longitude of the person is being tracked, and that can be utilized to drive a lot of innovation. For example, ride hailing services like Uber, Ola, they are utilizing the Google Map services to take us from one destination to the other destination. Someone said for the right product information. So yes, artificial intelligence is being utilized for scanning QRs to get the right information from legitimate source. Now, what has happened in the online world, there's a lot of debate around what is true information and what is false information, or I would say what is the right news or what is a false news. So here AI is going to play a vital role, and companies in the domestic market, in the international market are utilizing different technologies to provide this. Now going to the next slide. Now, this is a very interesting slide. We are today in the year 2021. However, AI or artificial intelligence for the first time was coined in the year 1956 by John McCarthy. And John McCarthy, these guys were working on AI-based models. However, now my next question to everyone here is, AI, as I said, it was coined in the year 1956. However, you would see there's a lot of discussion around AI in last couple of years, or I would rather say in last 5 years. Why you think AI has been talked about in last couple of years? Because the invention or the resources or the source of AI was developed in the year 1956, and it's like more than so many years of decades, and now AI is gaining momentum. So my next question is, why you think AI has gained momentum in last 5 years? So you can write in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and talk about it. So artificial intelligence was coined in the year 1956. That means some kind of research was conducted, and now in last couple of years, AI is gaining momentum. Just to add little more data here, most innovations in AI has happened in last 3 to 4 years. So why you think AI is gaining more momentum, and why you think AI has a role to play in the pharma regulatory affairs sector? It makes work smarter. Mode says it makes work smarter, right? Um, Herschel says growing and development, right? So I'll add these two data sets. It makes the work smarter. It's growing and developing. The second subset, Mrs. Arti says less chances of error, right? Now, what we are doing here is by utilizing this technology of artificial intelligence, when we talk about less chances of error, is basically we are making sure the data and the assessment is foolproof. Sachin says assessment of quality and prevention of tampering. Yes. Now, AI can be utilized in multiple ways. However, someone said decoding of information, very apt. Now, what has happened in the recent past? I'll take a step back and try to explain this thought process. Either of us, we are Android consumers or we are using Apple as a device. So both these platforms store a lot of data. That means what happens is whenever you purchase a smart device right now, how do you log into the device? When you switch on the device after charging it, you have to enter your data in terms, maybe if you're using an Android, it is Gmail. So a lot of data is being utilized and available for the machine. So now I'm taking AI as a machine, and it is being utilized to decode the information because a lot of data is available. There's ample data, and that data can be utilized not only to assess the quality and prevention of tampering, decoding of information to find new patterns, reducing defects in manufacturing. It can be utilized for growing and developing. And in totality, what it does, it makes the workflow flawless and it makes the workflow smarter. So thank you for that interaction. And I think let's go to the next slide. And I'll be discussing some examples and use case studies where AI is being utilized and how whatever we discussed has come into reality. What is artificial intelligence? Even, we now know that the word AI or artificial intelligence was introduced in the year 1956. However, before even going into the other details, let's dive deep into the understanding of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence refers to the ability of a computer, or I would say any computing device which is able to do some kind of computation to process the information. Information here can be the input data to produce possible outcomes. Outcomes can be, as we discussed, the outcome can be the error is going to be less. Can be the decoding of the information. Outcome can be reducing the defect in manufacturing, assessment of quality, and prevention of tampering. Now, this AI is trying to mimic a thought process of a human being in the learning stage. So there are three stages of the learning stage, then the decision-making stage. In the decision-making stage, whatever happens, maybe we are sitting in 2021 or we talk about 2031 or 2041, the interventions of human beings would be there in the decision-making. We can never allow AI or any kind of computing machine to make decisions on our behalf. So that is something we as experts or we as professionals should always take into consideration, that AI is there to assist us. It's just like you can consider it as a personal assistant, just like Google Alexa or Google Assistants. So AI is there to assist and solve the problems which we believe can be resolved by utilizing computing models. Let's go to the next slide. Now, another question for us, why AI now? We already discussed, now we have something called as big data. So now what is big data? I'll go a little bit deeper into the understanding of big data. So as I said, like if you are using an Android phone, each one of us is logging into the Android phone, and at any given point of time, or the number of hours we are spending on our computers or on the mobile device, the difference between the large screen and the small screen is the usage. However, on an average, and given the current situation, each one of us somewhere or the other, we are spending anywhere between 5 to 9 hours of our awake time in the online world. So you can understand those 9 hours is actually creating so much of data, which is related to the individual's behavior, which is related to the individual pattern of understanding. Okay, someone said there is some kind of network issue. Is my voice audible, or there's a network issue right now?
It is audible.
Sometimes you are not audible.
Okay. Is there any point you want me to repeat, or you were able to get the crux of it? Let me know. Okay. Okay. Fine. So my next question here is, why artificial intelligence now? Why you think the time is very apt to discuss AI in the current scheme of things? So that's my question to everyone. Why AI now? To improve speed and perfection, right? However, just understand so many people are online, and like we are still having network issues. So going back to the point of the data which is being generated. So one data is coming from Android, that is owned by Google. Second platform which is owning a lot of data or storing a lot of data is iOS, that is Apple. And third, but not the least, is Amazon. If you see, how many of you have used Amazon in current times in terms of purchasing your essentials in the online world? So these are the three main pillars who are storing the global data in many ways, and they are utilizing this data to drive different business models. That business model can be applied in the healthcare sector. It can be applied for remote monitoring. It can be applied in terms of lifestyle innovation. So today, AI, when we talk in the pharma sector also, the end goal of the pharma sector is to provide healthcare resources to the users. However, when we talk about GMPs, it's basically in the manufacturing sector. So the pharma sector itself can be subdivided into three subsets. First is the innovation of molecules, that is clinical trials. Second is in the manufacturing stage. And third is the healthcare sector of innovating in the lifestyle sector. So next, we have now, when we talk about AI, I talked about data. So data, as stated in many of the news articles, you might be hearing is the new mining oil, or big data is the mining oil. At the same time, big data is the new intellect which can be utilized to drive user behavior to to derive meaningful outcomes. So the deep neural network basically is how AI or the neurons in the computing world are working to train the data which is available to reduce the defects in manufacturing, or it can be utilized to decode the information. It can be utilized to access the quality, prevent the tamper, and the GMPs, which were discussed in the earlier sessions, are accomplished in a short possible time. Because when we talk about the pharma sector, the research and development, it takes anywhere between 10 to 15 years. Now, how AI can be utilized in conjunction with blockchain would be where similar kind of research is happening on a global basis. They come on a blockchain based technology, which is basically peer-to-peer node. Now, what is peer-to-peer node? We saw in one of the slides previously, where we had the data of the Gmap or the Google Map. So the peer-to-peer node is like each one of us, if we are right now 72 participants. So each one of us is sitting at a different location, and that different location itself is the latitude and the longitude. So you are one peer node sitting in one part of the city. I'm a peer node sitting in the other part of the city. So whatever data I am collating as a researcher in the pharma sector can be deployed on a blockchain, and then the computational power can be utilized to derive outcomes. Now, what are the outcomes? As we discussed, it might be decoding of the data itself to reduce the defects, to access the good manufacturing points, or I would say there is something called as HACCP. Now, what is HACCP? HACCP is basically hazard analysis critical control points. So the red flag, or I would say the leaky pipelines in any supply chain, when we talk about the pharma sector also, maybe the manufacturing has taken place. And in the current situation, when we're talking about COVID, it's like how the vaccines would be available, how many are available. If it is deployed on a blockchain in a public ledger, many people would be able to see it, view it at any given point of time. So a lot of innovation is happening in deep neural networks. It has application and it is utilized for neural network architecture. So how does it work? How does the AI work? So there is something called as input data. And now in this case, maybe if you're talking about healthcare sector, say for example, a particular set of subject people are given some kind of pharma medicine. And then in that case, what are the input parameters of that individual? We are taking it in the way of maybe height, age, or gender. So probably when these number of people were administered a certain drug, and based on this very simple parameter of height, age, gender, to add here, I would say the environmental location would also be responsible for coming out with the outcome of that drug. What are the environmental factors in which that person is working? What are the the stress factors? Because what has happened till now in last, I would say, somewhere from 1970 till 2005, because before 2005, the Indian patent law also for the pharmaceutical sector was totally different. After 2005, a lot has changed. We talked about efficacy in the earlier session. So when we talk about the pharma sector, there's something called as therapeutic efficacy. And therapeutic efficacy per se has not been very well established in terms of what will amount to therapeutic efficacy. So if you go through any of the pharmaceutical based patent application where the therapeutic efficacy is being talked about, there you will see a lot of parameters or research papers, and the data points of the research are included in the application. So how does the AI work? Say, for example, this is AI. The input data, apart from the other factors, I'm just taking very simple factors like height, age, and gender. Some kind of computation is happening where the height is changed into W height, that is, we are giving it a code so that the evaluation becomes easier. Because at the end of the day, what is a computing power doing? It is computing everything in 0 and 1s. So somehow any kind of input data which is being utilized is converted into 0 and 1s, that is your binary digits, and then that is computed to the well-defined different computing equations to derive outcomes. So here, this is a very simple example of how a neural network would work. There would be an input data, then there would be tagging of that data, which is predetermined by the people who are, or the scientists who are working on the model. And then there is some kind of output data, and that data assists in deriving or in the decision-making process, and it makes the work simple. It makes the whole process streamlined in a manner where the input data can be utilized in multiple ways, and different kind of hypothesis can be utilized for deriving the utility delta of the model. So basically, when we talk about AI, the subset of AI is machine learning. And the very simple subset where the application is in the email spam filtering, machine translation, image recognition, text recognition, voice recognition. So say, for example, I have a question for each one of you. For voice recognition, we can talk about Google Assistant. What about text recognition? How do you think AI, or do you know about any example where text is recognized by an AI and it is being processed to gain meaningful outcomes? It can be text, it can be image. How do you think text recognition and image recognition can assist the pharmaceutical regulatory affair framework to work in a better streamlined manner? Anyone? So for voice, we have Google Assistant. We already talked about it. I'm looking for an example for the text recognition and image recognition. How do you think text recognition by AI can assist the pharmaceutical sector? Or maybe the image recognition can be utilized in the pharmaceutical sector? Google Lens, yes. Google Lens is a very good example. Then we have Google autocorrect, right? Text recognition can also be utilized for translation purposes. That helps in the interaction between people who are not very conversant with one language which is understood by all. So yeah, these are good examples. Now, what are the typical points or the, in the Herschel says it's language identification. Yes, it is utilized in the language identification also. In the case of image recognition, is based on Python technique of data science coding technique. Yes, now when we talk about Python, as Sachin just mentioned this, I would urge everyone to go through something called as, I'll just type it here. It is called as GitHub. Now, this GitHub is basically an open source platform where you will see the best of the people who are coding. They share their codes, and that's how you can even, when you are doing some kind of, maybe, in your college also, you take up a short-term program where you say, okay, let's get this, we are solving this kind of pharma problem which is existing. You can go to the GitHub, you can just search about it and see the codes which have been utilized and learn little bit about the coding techniques. And coding today, like, there's a lot of integration between technologies. Even if you are from a pharmaceutical sector, understanding how Python works, understanding how the codes are working, it would be very useful skill set for you to get better job opportunities in the near future. So that's one of my what I have learned from the experience. So probably you can get onto GitHub someday and then look for these data points. So the codes are already there. You can run it on Python. Python is a very simple language where it's just drag and drop. So everything is done. You just need to know from where you need to take the input data and utilize it for meaningful outcomes. So where is the innovation happening in terms of AI being utilized in the regulatory framework? First, it is the pre-processing of data sets itself. Like in previous example, which we saw, like say, for example, the input data is just, say, the 67 participants who are attending this Zoom webinar. If the input is like, your height, age, and other parameters, we can pre-process the data depending on another parameter of maybe, the kind of food somebody is taking. Because when we talk about the pharma sector or healthcare, food somehow is very vital for longevity of an individual, apart from whatever medicines we are taking, because right intake of food increases the immunity of the person. So that is pre-processing of the data. So I'm just giving one of the examples. Now, the next innovation can happen at the input data stage when we talk about efficacy. Say, for example, we have the data. Now, efficacy data itself can be subdivided into multiple subsets. One such subset is therapeutic efficacy. What kind of efficacy are we talking about? What are the parameters of those efficacies? So the deeper we dive into it and intervene as human scientists to the input data, it is basically, filtering. It's just like when you take sand and you put it in water and, you just pour it through the filter. So the pore size of the filter will determine what is going to be filtered. So in the same manner, the input data can be filtered so that the data which is not needed for that particular training of the AI, it can be neglected, so that the output is more resourceful for the purpose itself. So that's what input data is all about. And that's where a lot of innovation can also happen at the input stage. Now, say, for example, when we talk about the GMPs, as Sir talked about GMP, I would like to add, if there's a facility, deployment of sensors in the facility, in the driveway, is going to give a better result in terms of like if you use UV light. So the UV light in that particular hallway is going to kill the contaminants. And when those contaminants are killed, then the percentage of the result is going to be better. So these are some of the precautionary measures which can be taken in consideration when AI is being deployed at various stages of the pharmaceutical sector supply chain. So this is another very interesting understanding of AI. I just have 1 hour to discuss this, because AI itself, when we are even discussing in lieu of any of the sectors, the sessions can go for months and months. However, I'm trying to at least give those nuggets where you have a fair understanding what AI is all about. So the learning process can be supervised learning to train the data sets, or it can be unsupervised learning. Now, what does it mean by supervised learning to train the data sets? So supervised learning is basically the human intervention which is happening. The outcome is already known. So when you know the outcome, you have fair idea of what you are dealing with. So it has its own pros and cons. However, right now we are just discussing about the kind of AI-based models are being utilized to train any data set. So that is supervised learning, where you know the outcome. There's something called as unsupervised learning also, where the outcome is not known to the human. That means the pattern or the outcome has not been deduced by the human. However, the computing power is coming up with a new pattern, which might be resourceful, or it might be a kind of a data set or a result which might be used at some later stage. So now it has to be decided by the people who are utilizing the AI, whether you want to undergo the supervised learning or you want to go through the unsupervised learning, because unsupervised learning is going to give you outcomes which might not be identified by humans. So that is a very conscious decision made by the scientists or the people or the data scientists who are working in this domain. Now, how does it work? You know, how does the AI really work in an environment where consider AI not as a machine but as an agent? And this environment is basically the jigsaw puzzle of data which is available in the online world, or the data which is stored in the servers, which is not shared by the outside, but you have your in-house servers. So the big pharmaceutical companies, they don't share their data or the data points outside the company. So those data points are basically this environment. So the agent is being trained to identify useful patterns. Say, for example, we discussed about assessment of quality and prevention of tampering. So maybe for the assessment of quality, we can say the efficacy has to be this much percentage. And if like if the pharma output is a tablet, in many cases, even, you know, the more the stricter the regulations in terms of even the size of the tablet. So the size has to be precise. There should not be any kind of inversion in the tablet. So those kind of errors can also be defined by AI, but we need to train the model for that. Now, AI in the current scheme of things is playing a crucial role in drug approval and marketing, that is the regulatory affairs. Now, how this information can be understood in a manner, I have some patent applications where we will try and decode how to not only read a patent application available to the pharma sector, because I believe somewhere or the other, today or tomorrow, maybe you guys will or get into the process of protecting some kind of innovation.
It's 13 hours.
So AI can overcome challenges by identifying novel interactions and interfering functional aspects. So that is the clinical aspect. First usage of AI in the regulatory sector is the approval of drugs, and to develop a strategy, we have some slides on that where we will dig deep into the understanding of approval of drugs, how AI plays a vital role for the approval and to prepare a strategy for the same. AI, in terms of, as I said, take it as an agent. The agent is able to interpret the data, to make the work smarter, less chances of error. The application is less chances of error, assessment of quality, prevention and tampering, decoding of information to identify new patterns, or just to make a foolproof supply chain. It is very useful for commercialization of drugs, not only in one country, but in multiple countries. Compliance is very important, as discussed by previous speakers also. How AI can be utilized for the compliance with country regulations and guidelines. Given the fact every 6 months, so many innovations are happening, the guidelines are changing drastically. So when we talk about the Cosmetic Act, so the Cosmetic Act has to be read with other acts also, because the Cosmetic Drug Act only talks about certain things. The definition is limited to certain categories. And basically, when we talk about law and when we talk about regulation, there's a intermingle of so many laws. And the best practices would be to utilize multiple laws to understand a given situation and find the leaky pipelines. And that is where, the pharmaceutical sector is playing a very vital role. Say, for example, there's a cosmetic product which needs entry in India. So that cosmetic product entry has to be through the drug controllers parameters of filling in forms, but there's a lot of integration of other laws also, because when a cosmetic or any pharma product is entering in any country, trademark laws also play a very vital role. When we talk about trademark, there is a patent law, then we have IPC and CPC. So there is integration of many acts to come up with a good guideline or SOP for the working of the pharma sector in a way where the leaky pipelines are identified and the information is decoded in a manner where most of the regulatory approvals can be achieved in the shortest possible time. So another application of AI in the pharma sector is clinical research to shape and direct the clinical trials. It is used in advanced predictive analysis in identifying candidates for clinical trials. Now, a very good example here would be when we talk about, identifying candidates in clinical trials, because when we talk about efficacy, therapeutic efficacy becomes very important to any pharma company, or even if you are into manufacturing of biosimilars. So there what happens is you need to identify the right candidates for the clinical trials. Maybe people who are situated in a certain demographic equation. Now, why demography plays a very vital role? Because each one of us, we have a lifestyle of eating pattern of people in a certain demography would be same. Say, for example, even rice are of many types. And when we say it's parboiled rice, or somebody is having basmati rice, or somebody is having a rice which is fortified. So fortification is also playing a very vital role in the current scheme of things to develop not only medicines for immunity boosters. So fortification also plays a very vital role. So demography pattern is also taken into consideration. So identifying candidates in clinical trials, those are the parameters. Those are one of the parameters or some of the parameters which I just discussed. However, we can go deep into the thought process of what kind of candidates should be there for the clinical trial. Now, AI usage is in the remote monitoring and in real time. The biggest boom, what I believe is the real-time analysis or real-time data collection, which is happening through the deployment of AI. So the data access is there for increased safety, biological and other signals for any signs of harm or death of participants. When we understand, or if you want to understand the remote monitoring concept, the outcome is generally to have the longevity of a person and at the same point of time, identify the pain points when it is at the initial stage. If any person is suffering from any kind of ailment, if it is identified at the initial stage, what happens is the resource, I would say the treatment would be in terms where the person can recover faster rather than somebody who is being diagnosed at a later stage. So their remote monitoring and real-time analysis in the pharma sector is going to play a vital role. Thank you, Shraddha. She says it's nice and informative session. Thank you so much for that comment. And if you guys have any question, please feel, I have the chat in front of me. I can answer your questions as I address the PPT presentation also. So next very important information is to find the best sample size for increased efficacy. Pharma and efficacy, they go hand in hand. It's like marriage between that. Two main pillars of pharma sector is pharma should be equal to efficacy, because if the efficacy is good, as I said, efficacy can be termed in the therapeutic efficacy also. Or if we understand the candidate or the subject to whom a pharma molecule or a pharma formulation is being administered, what happens in that case is, when we understand the candidate from most of the parameters, not only the lifestyle parameter. Okay, so we have a question here. Can you please tell us once? Okay, demography. Yeah, I'll address that point here. So say, for example, a particular vaccine or a drug is a win-win for some people, and some people are not able to recover. The best example for that is the situation we all are in, that is COVID-19. So whatever is being administered to the candidate, I'll take the subject or the person suffering from the ailment as a candidate. Now, why demography becomes very important is, say, for example, let's take the best example would be our country, India, where if a person is living in, I stay in New Delhi, my way of the eating habit would be little different from somebody who is living at a coastal region, maybe Maharashtra, Bangalore, or West Bengal. So people who are near the coast, generally it's I'm not getting into the deeper data, but people who are living in the coastal regions, their way of eating habit is different in terms of eating fish, because the resource of fish is available very easily to those people. So if somebody is having fish, so omega-3 fatty acid, that is very natural to the body of that person. So somehow the benefits of omega-3 fatty acid would be there for those people. So here, demography is going to play a vital role, because already that person's immune system is high because of the place that person is coming from, or from the place the person has stayed for substantial time. There are some people, say for example, if somebody is working in army, so they have their posting in different parts of India. So they travel different parts of India and they are stationed in particular region maybe for 2 years. So that way they get the benefit of the whole country in terms of the eating lifestyle, because at the end of the day, food is one of the most important pillar for any human being to survive. So what kind of food patterns a person is having, and that will base on the demography of what is available very easily, because then the cost factor also comes into consideration. So I hope somebody had asked me the question about demography. So those can be the sub parameters of demography, and they can be other parameters also in terms of if the genetics of that person, the family history. That's how a doctor, takes into other parameters also, like what the father, mother, the grandparents. If somebody has a diabetic line in the family, then the administration of the pharma molecule would be different, because there is some kind of immune response to everything in the body. So coming back to finding the best sample size for increased efficacy, this is something where AI will be very resourceful, because what I feel from my experience is, till date, when we talk about clinical trials, the people who are candidates, they are more in the way I define it is like guinea pigs. Guinea pigs means they are being administered without even taking most of the parameters into consideration. So AI can be utilized to get answers to that unanswered questions where actually efficacy is defined in the right way. Right now, it's more of what I would say is just because there are laws and regulations, we go into the process of these clinical trials where we have people signing in for the clinical trials, and we get the document signed, where it is more of, I would say very robotic in nature, without even getting into the consideration of how that administration of drug, vaccine, molecule will hamper the lifestyle of that person at large. Using electronic medical records to reduce data errors, somebody rightly pointed out when I had asked the question that data error can be reduced. How the data error can be reduced, we'll see in next couple of slides. So yes, this is the most interesting part, and I love to explain everyone how to read a patent application, because see, the best part of communication technology or internet is knowledge is free. How we deploy that knowledge in the best possible manner is up to us. So if you see in this figure, okay, if you see in this figure, this is basically a deployment of regulatory framework, how automated tracking and optimization happens, and how the approvals can happen in a fast, speedy manner. So basically, this invention is going to talk about the automated tracking utilizing the AI. I'll try and explain you with the figures, and just try to imagine the whole thought process in your imagination, so that you're able to understand these figures and appreciate how AI is already being utilized, and it is already there in the market. So communication network is basically the internet. So you might be hearing the word, cloud servers, cloud database. It's basically, it is denoted by a cloud. It's the communication network. Now, how a communication network works, basically spectrum is, in the air, we have UV rays, we have visible spectrum and invisible spectrum. How we deploy the devices to work and use that spectrum to communicate from one node to the other. So that is basically internet in very simple words. Now, coming back to the invention of this particular case, you have user computing device. So right now, what is user computing device for you and me? For me, it is the laptop, which is there in front of me. Maybe for you, the user computing device is your smartphone, or it is basically any other device. Then at the manufacturing site also, you have these devices deployed, and then you have something called as Atom. Now, the innovation here is the Atom module, which is basically the AI. And what does Atom stand for? Is automated tracking and optimization of global manufacturing system. So we will, I will share the presentation with you, and definitely if you have any other questions in near future, I'll be happy to take it. So basically this system is a computing device method to automate the tracking and optimization of global manufacturing and supply based on impacts of post-approval changes, which is known as PACs, has been discussed or disclosed in this invention. Okay, so next, if we just see the figure here, now you will appreciate the fact in terms of we had the atom module here, which is figure number 1, which is happening somewhere at the manufacturing site. So this is there, which is being deployed at the manufacturing site, and how does it work in detail? So this was the basic, schematic diagram of how this module is being deployed. Let's go to the details. So this automated tracking module dashboard has many parameters. It is ship to list, when the shipping will happen, change control, impactment of lot, pending change control, then the country, status, world grid, data completeness, and you have other details. Now, what is SQL? SQL is basically structured query language to store the database, just like, in very simple words, as rows and columns. So how that data is stored on a particular date, like data is stored on a daily basis. So it will be timestamped with date, time, place, the person involved for evaluating the data at that point. So this is what SQL is all about. Now, how the engine is working here is you have different approval dates, regulatory filings. These are all are, I would say, the subdivisions of the pharma regulatory affair as a whole. So now how to read the data is basically the data source includes at least one inventory. In terms of their different databases, there's an inventory database, there's a regulatory database, there's a PAC information database. So each SQL here is representing different databases, storing different data, different parameters to streamline the whole process. Now, what is the inventory database holding here? It is holding lot information associated with drug products, substances, or both. Now, API is also very important. We understand outcome is important, but in the current situation of what we all are, and if we talk about the pharma sector in India, you would be reading in newspapers, we don't have the APIs with us in terms of the initial material required for the production of the drug. So that data is there. Then the PAC information database is holding control information of the manufacturing process or material supply affected by one or more PACs in the global landscape. The regulatory database is holding information to the regulatory approvals by regulatory authorities of a plurality of countries of one or more PACs. We understand India is a country where it's not only known for its agriculture, it's known for its pharma sector. As rightly pointed out by Govind sir, you will see a lot of pharma sector being holded in Maharashtra, Aurangabad. So those are the places where in 1980s, the manufacturing plants were constructed because of so many reasons. So coming back to the point here is there are different databases where the data is held. We have not yet come to the point of how AI is being deployed, which we will be discussing now. Okay, so the data is retrieved. Now, what does the data retrieval mean in very simple words? Just think the data is stored in stacks. So when the data is stored in stacks, now we need to identify the impact of one or more data on PAC. And that is where the atom module, as I said, atom module is basically the innovation here. And what is atom module? It is automated tracking and optimizing manufacturing supply module. So here all the data are there, and a predefined rule set is defined by the humans, how the data should be trained to determine the changes. So say, for example, how the determination step will happen. If I say, in this case, if API, the batch process of the API is like less than 40%, that is a red flag for me. So probably I'll tag it as the tagging would be like, say, for example, 01010 in binary digits. So that will amount to that, and that will generate a list of the identified impact of one or more drug products and drug substances. So it's basically on a real time how you can utilize AI to determine what is needed for the supply chain to work in a manner where it is streamlined in a way and it becomes easy for the regulatory framework to work. Now, another very important example here, which is not allocated, is I would say the laws and regulations or the amendments which are happening continuously in every country just to look into the different aspects of regulation. Definitely one is, to avoid the tampering at any stage. The second very important is if somebody has a malified intention and introduces a pharma product which is of inferior quality, again, that is a red check mark which needs to be taken into consideration. So how AI can be deployed at customs, how AI can be deployed at various stages to identify the leaky pipelines and get a solution for that. So here, how it is working, we are in continuation with the same invention right now. There is pack analysis, exclusion analysis, stock analysis, and filing estimation. Now, there can be different embodiments. Now, different embodiments means the same atom module can be utilized for different results. So here, it is being utilized to control when to order the raw materials in time. Say, for example, if the raw material percentage has decreased less than 50%, it's time to order. Now, where the storage will happen. So everything is optimized so that it is known to the company, like this is the time to order the materials. Taking into the account the time of year and time it takes to receive materials based on the feedback loop, how the time of receiving materials would be different right now in the COVID situation. So whether it's seasonal or whether how to save costs. Say, for example, shipping can be a very good example. If the database is actually retrieving the data, like, there are shipping containers and those containers have some empty spaces in terms of shipping. So the pharma company will get that shipping container cost reduced, because already that is something called as wastage for the shipping industry. So there is, I would say, AI is integrating all the possible embodiments to come up with solutions where it can be cost related, whether it can be to just understand the supply chain, and different embodiments are there. Let's see what all we have. Control the shipping schedules, to utilize the timing of regulatory filing. Sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes it's 6 months, 9 months. So those aspects also taken care of. The atom module to control country specific packaging and labeling. Every country has different way of packaging and labeling. European countries have different way of allowing some packages. Many times Indian pharma companies are manufacturing these in the international markets. Some are accepted easily, some are sent back just because the packaging and the labeling was not right. So to reduce those costs, AI would be a boom for the industry. Now, the atom module is used to execute and commence manufacturing of a drug substance and drug product, as we already discussed the input data and the output data. So this is another example. So this is another way of understanding the whole landscape. When we talk about front-end interaction visualization layer, is basically understand the user device, which we talked about in the last application. So this is what would be seen on the UI. UI is basically the user interface. So user interface right now for you people is the PowerPoint presentation, which is being shown to you on your screen. So that is front end for you. Now, the AI orchestration layer, if we talk about Zoom right now, the Zoom module through which we are interacting, that is the orchestration layer. So here, in this case, when we talk about the pharma sector, there's an AI model development system, there's a database, there's assistance and IT services to take care of, maybe proper channelizing of information from point 1 to point B. Then the backend interface, just imagine the manufacturing sector, that is the backend interface. Then we have a couple of data storage, and then there's cloud. Now, cloud is basically controlling the result display component, AI module manager component, domain, literature, regulatory data. Now, this is very important. When we talk about domain literature, so when we talk about domain literature, regulatory data here is basically the data which is freely available, and there are some paid databases. So as a pharma company, do you have access to the paid database, or you are just using the literature which is available in the online world, which is free? So many a times that is why when we are using AI models, the cost factor increases in the initial stages, because that is the training stage when we deploy AI in any kind of system. But over the years, you will see there is that is called as prediction, that by deploying this AI model, a lot can be saved in terms of the cost of the company and the advantage the company will have in the long term. So this is very interesting. As I said, the backend integration, just understand this for the time being as, the manufacturing side or the admin side. So when we talk about the admin side, this invention is basically to deal with the distribution layer. So we have medical image system when we talk about monitoring of healthcare records. So for the monitoring of healthcare records, many times, people just take a screenshot of an X-ray through their mobile phones and they try to send to their doctors for diagnosis. Now, whether that doctor would be able to diagnose it in a proper manner, it's a question mark. Now, why there's a question mark? Because the sensor which is required to sense the medical images, it needs special kind of screening. So there's a lot of innovation in AI where medical image storing itself is an invention. Or the megapixels which are there to store the medical images is different from what is required for the doctor for the analysis when a remote monitoring is being performed. Then we have different structures, databases here. We have a research registry. And if we see the external data sources and system, what is important is what is being reported. So it is the patient data, the workflow data, the clinician data, and the facility data in this particular case. So just try to understand this artificial intelligence orchestration layer as what Zoom platform is providing right now. At any given point of time, the data, if there's a data lag between me talking and that being received by multiple people, is basically the database of Zoom is on load. There's so many people who would be on Zoom at this point of time. So the database is storing the data, and it is, real-time transmission of data happening. So this is what AI model database is all about. Then at the same point of time, there are different subsystems of AI model in this case, which has been denoted by AI model development system. Then there's assistance also, which comes with other components in this case. So the front end is basically what the client device or the candidate patient would be viewing from his device. That is the clinical AI application. Then there is a local clinical application. Now, what is local clinical application? Just imagine it from the point of view that application which you're downloading from whether Android or so coming back to the point here is when you download an application, it takes a certain space on your computer, on your smart device. So basically that space is for the local application to work on your device. So that is why, you know, some technologies take more space, because to work in a seamless manner, a lot of coding is done, which is termed as the local application. And in this case, it is the imaging application, because if you're taking an image, the image has to be converted in a manner which is acceptable by the regulatory standards, like this should be the megapixel in terms of the image. Then there's a clinical reporting application. Another thing which is there in the front end is the interaction. Now, when we talk about interaction in the remote sense, it might be that, you know, the patient can actually connect with a doctor in the real-time field, that is clinical feedback component also, or it can be a chatbot also for discussing the general feedback or general questions. Many times patients want to ask a particular doctor. So I'm not getting into the detail. If you have any particular question, I can address it. So I'll come to the last part of the webinar today, that is the ethical issues and the regulations which are there, or I would say which are in discussion and which would be deployed in the near future. Is output data fair enough? Now the thing is, when I started the webinar, I talked about the fact that AI based can be supervised learning or it can be unsupervised learning. So the data which is output, is it fair enough to make a decision? That's a question mark. You need human intervention. You need people from different backgrounds to work on the output data also to determine the outcomes in the best possible way. Then the research standards. Is there in the current scheme of things a research standard which is applicable to all countries? I think WHO and other authorities are working towards it. Third very interesting factor is bias towards minority class. Now what happens is, as humans, we always think, or I would say most of the cases, the human behavior thinks that these are the important parameters in the given data set. And we train the AI, which is an agent, with only that data set. Maybe whatever we are leaving behind, the data which was available to us, should be utilized to understand that particular problem statement. So many a times there's bias towards a particular data set. So I think that is where people from different backgrounds have to play a good actor role to devise and train the AI models in a manner where AI result is useful enough to circumvent the problems which are existing in the current state of the art, and the utility delta is much more profound as compared to the current state of the art. AI should always be under radar. Technology is there to assist us. Technology should not be utilized where we say, just leave everything to technology and we'll take a seat back. AI or any technology should always have participation from humans. Human intervention is very important. And where the human intervention is important is another field where different experts can come in together to find that solution. With this, in my presentation, I would love to hear your remarks. And if you have any question, please feel free to ask me. And I would be happy to take future sessions on the regulatory aspect of how different laws can be deployed or the different GMPs can be utilized with technology to gain momentum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for interactive session. Now the session is open for discussion. If participants have question, they can put in a chat box or they can directly ask ma'am.
Hello, can I ask one question, sir?
Yeah. Sure.
Good afternoon, madam. Your session was very excellent. One point I would like to ask you that if we want to means convert our lab scale to means whatever the research we are conducting in our laboratory for a scale up study. So what types of the precautions or what types of the things we keep in our mind so that failure mode will not be established?
Thank you for this question. The very simple fact is to utilize the current technologies to record everything. Because if you have a regular recording of data, maybe in Excel sheets, because understand this, Excel, Microsoft Excel platform itself is a beautiful way to store the data, and multiple computation can be done by utilizing Microsoft Excel. So what I would suggest is record the data on a regular basis on Microsoft Excel and learn Microsoft Excel as a skill set where you are able to compute the results, and thereby, you can identify the errors and you can work on it.
Okay, thank you, madam.
Yes, participants. I wish to ask one question. In the regular practices, as far as the regulatory audits are concerned, near about 23% of errors are due to the improper documentation. What is your opinion? How this artificial intelligence helps in reducing this type of the errors?
See, when we talk about the error of 23% here and the proper and improper documentation, what is very important, what I believe for any company or pharma sector is to have proprietary technology in AI where they are training the data set, and the data set has to be like, you need to have those data scientists, you need to have people from the pharma sector. So right now what is happening is people think that, to be a data scientist, you need to have computer-based technology or understanding of computing language in a different manner. What I believe is multiple people have to work in an organization to train the AI so that people with the expertise of pharma, they give the pharma expertise, people with the data expertise give the data expertise, people with the regulatory expertise give the regulatory expertise, and then there's a strategist. So the whole way the industries have been working is going to change. The change is already there in some foreign countries. However, what we need to see is to use the best practices to evolve. And when we say proprietary technology, that means it's some kind of trade secret to the pharma company also. And that also adds value to the evaluation of the pharma companies, because generally the pharma companies, when they attain a value, they go for IPO. And when they're going for IPO, having your own intellectual property assets is going to be a boom. And AI, as I said, it's there to facilitate. You cannot just say, we just put in the data and we sleep over it. It has to be a regular thing. And the appreciation has to come from the stakeholders in the pharma companies, that they are ready to invest in people. You have to invest in people, in the resources, treat them well in terms of what they bring to the table. And the way I see it, I see people working in multiple organizations rather than one organization, because once you become an expert, you are required everywhere. So, if I'm training an AI, I train AI for 3 months, then what next? I'll move on to something else. Then what next? I'll move on to something else. And that's how, you spend your next 5 years doing something. And after that, you become expert in understanding the subject. Then you work in different sectors. So gone are those days where, you know, a person is working in a single organization for rest of the life. And it's always good to upskill in different technologies. And I think that is where, you know, different data sets have to be identified. And consider yourself as an AI first. I always say that, you know, when we're talking about neurons, human mind is like 3 billion neurons to work with. We hardly use it. So let's use it with our common sense, and I think that will take care of most of the things.
Thank you, ma'am. I think all the participants are taking the message to home after your session that artificial intelligence is the future of pharma industry, not only in RA, safety and other related aspects of the pharmaceutical industry. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time and your valuable talk on artificial intelligence. Ola, ma'am, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving a very for covering a very vast topic and giving us a very brief knowledge about it. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Pleasure is all mine, and I look forward to more interactions and more sessions with everyone. I think.
Sure, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
In the coming future, we'll be in touch with you, and we'll have some more sessions for our students also.
Yes, ma'am.
And looking for your contribution in coming future also.
Yes. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am.
There is an announcement for the participants. Our third session will be started 2:30 sharply. You are requested to join at a scheduled time. Thank you.
And participants, kindly join with your registration numbers. Thank you.